So let's talk about football. Thanks for joining. So this just kind of came to me, and so I take full responsibility if it's good, and I'll deflect it to Lynn if it's poor. But the idea is, I was thinking about some of the complexities, and it was part of the RED process where things that we need to do better, and we talk about we need to do better at fractional use of resources. We need to do better at the complex game that we're running, if you will, as a business. And it just occurred to me that football has the same challenge. And so as I started thinking through that and piecing the two together, it really seemed like football as an analogy was a pretty good analogy for what we maybe ought to look at doing in terms of running a business. So bear with me. I'll get through this, and then we can decide whether it makes sense. But for now, Crown Game Plan of 2012 is looking at our business as really as a football game. And if anybody thought for a second that I wouldn't put a Steelers picture up first on top of a Bengals person, you were fooled. So this idea is business being a complex game, and NFL or football in general being a complex game is kind of the theme of the whole story. And so what I'm trying to do here is maybe take a chapter out of what they've done over the last, 50 years in terms of how they play the game. And so the question is, and it's a real question, right, is what makes the Steelers great and the Bengals, I'm being kind and saying average. And pound for pound, frankly, the Steelers don't have as good players as the Bengals. And so how is it possible that the Bengals have one winning season in the last 10 years? How is that possible, Bud? So it's not necessarily about Steelers versus Bengals, but the idea here is there's a process that one team uses versus another team to be great. Because at the NFL level, they're all great. Every one of the players are great. So how do you get a team that's dominant versus a team that's average or poor? It's about the process that they run. And so I started digging into, that is really poor. I started digging into the process. I started thinking about a couple different things. So first and foremost, just NFL Rulebook 101. I'm going to go through each one of these because I want you to start to think about these and link them to our business, and I'll help you do that in a second. And so they're definitive terms for playing football. And by the way, there are relatively few. There aren't a lot. So if you don't know football and you sit down and watch it for the first time, it's complex and you probably don't get it. But there's not a lot of rules to the game, and there's not a lot of things going on. The field is pretty simple. It's 100 yards. There's a red zone that's 20 yards out, and there's an end zone. The timing is divided into 4 15-minute quarters. I can see it on my screen better than up there.
You want me to shuffle that?
That might help. It's divided into 4 15-minute quarters. There are 2-minute breaks before the end of each half, always. There's a player clock, so everybody's got 40 seconds to run a play. So think about some of these things in terms of what we do with our business. In terms of the players, there's really only a couple groups. There's offense, defense, and special teams. And there's this concept of first, second, and third string. The kickoff, by the way, the kickoff of the game, it's always the same. They always do it on, I think they moved it to the 35-yard line now, didn't they? But it's still always at the 35-yard line. They always start a game or a half or after a touchdown with a kickoff. They always do it. First down is kind of the game. The idea is to get a first down, and when you get a first down, you get to repeat downs. And so it happens after 10 yards. If you can't get 10 yards, you punt. And so everybody knows that what their first down is, if you will. They do something before they run every play, right? They either do a huddle or they do the hurry-up offense, but they know what they're going to do. They don't make it up. They know what their team is good at, and then they do it every single time. There are only a couple different plays they run. They either run the ball, they pass the ball, they turn over the ball, they fumble the ball, they intercept the ball, or somebody tackles the guy with the ball, right? But it's all about the ball. And so they know that the whole game evolves around this ball. And then scoring is really pretty simple. The objective is just to score more points than the other person. You don't necessarily have to score a lot. You just have to score one more than your opponent. That's it. And then there are only a couple ways to score. So this isn't a football education, but they know there are a couple ways to actually score. And so that's the rule book. And then you can get into the positions. And this one I want to key in on a couple different things. But there are 3 main buckets for the positions. There's the back office, and it's the owner is generally considered in the back office as well as the general manager. There's sales and marketing, player personnel, scouts, trainers, legal, and finance. Very analogous, I think, to what we do or should be doing here at Crown. There's this concept of the front office, not the players, the front office. By the way, most of the people don't know who the people are in the back office. Outside of the owner, maybe Jerry Jones and the general manager, once in a while you know who that is. You don't know the other folks in the back office as a customer, if you will. In the front office, you know the coach. Sometimes you know the assistant coach. If the defensive coordinator is as good as LeBeau, then you know him. But for the most part, you don't know who it is. Does anybody know who the defensive coordinator was for the Super Bowl? The team that won the Super Bowl? Anybody?
Yeah, who won the Super Bowl?
The Packers. They beat the Steelers. My point here is you don't generally know who those folks are because they're not the star players. The star players are the players. And by the way, that's all the roles on a football team. That's it. There are no more. And there are even a couple here you probably haven't heard of, like gunner and wedge buster and up back. But that's it. Those are the roles, and everybody on that team, all those folks up and down those sidelines, play one of those roles. And they've even gotten so complex or so simplified in their complex system that they've put abbreviations next to their roles. And they do that because it's easier to do X's and O's and draw out plays with a C and a G and a T versus writing those names out. And so they know their roles, they've defined their roles, and they play those roles. They have rituals, and so there are a lot of different rituals that go on, and they happen consistently. So recruiting, they sit down and they do the depth chart, and they do their preseason planning, and they throw it up on the wall, and they have the different strings, and they go through who they want. They start to do their recruiting, and they do it through the combines, and then they have draft day, and it happens every single year. When they go through training, after they have their team, they do off-campus training, and then they move to preseason before they ever actually start their season. At game day, they do game warm-up, they do a coin toss, they do a kickoff, they do halftime, and they do post-game. It's a ritual that happens every single game. Post-game, they always go back and look at the real reviews. They always look at how they did so they can improve on the next one. And then there's a goal in terms of ritual, and that is we need to get to the AFC or NFC Championship because ultimately we want to win the Super Bowl. They know at the end of the year the whole goal is to get to that so they can have a chance to play in the Super Bowl. And on the other side of this is communication. So it is a really complex game. If you sit down and watch a game from beginning to end, there's a lot of communication going on. On the back office, certainly back office needs to communicate what funds are available, what players are we looking at acquiring, who's been traded, who's been injured, what are their contracts, what's the schedule that we need to play to, what kind of personnel issues do we have. And those things are going on all the time in the back office. In the front office, the whole goal of the front office, the coordinators, if you will, is to decide who plays what role and when. And then at the same time, call the plays. They know who's going to call them, and they know when to call the certain plays. And that's the coordinator's role. And then the players have all kinds of different communications that go on. They do huddles before every single play. Once in a while, there's an audible called, and not everybody can call an audible. So you've seen a couple emails go out about we're calling an audible, right? There's one person that can call an audible. Anybody know who it is? The quarterback. He's the only guy that can call an audible. It'd be kind of weird if the tight end called an audible, right? The quarterback's the only guy that can call an audible. They do other things like feedback and congratulations and the other typical inspirational kind of things when you want to pick somebody up. And they do pregame and postgame. So this isn't let me keep going, one more. So there is a purpose also to a franchise, and there's a definitive purpose, and these are my versions of what the purpose is. They have an objective, a purpose, and a vision. The objective is to make money. They do it in a couple different ways. So they make them through ticket sales. They get bonus fees for getting to the playoffs. They get additional fees when they win the Super Bowl. There are sponsorships, there's television contracts, and there's team paraphernalia sales. That's generally how they bring their revenue in. But that's just the objective. Most franchises have a purpose, and that is to create a dynasty. So I purposely put the Cowboys up here for that reason. They're looking for season-over-season wins. They're always looking for an opportunity for players to become great. They're looking for opportunities for coaches to make a name for themselves and for owners to be legends. That's the goal of getting into and being a part of a franchise. And at the end of the day, everybody wants to be America's team. And that's frankly why it just kills me that the Cowboys are America's team and not the Steelers. But everybody wants to be America's team because they want to be relevant to their home city and they want to be relevant to their loyal fans. And so that's what the NFL is all about. So just imagine if that didn't exist. What would that game look like? Right? So I have a couple ideas. Imagine if, and so I did bring a prop, thanks to Rob, that I'll put on for the rest of this presentation. Right? So imagine if none of that existed. Right? Imagine if there were no roles and therefore no plays. Imagine if the coordinators called plays. Just imagine what that would be like. Imagine if players coordinated and the back office was on the field and the players were in the front office. You gonna take a picture and sit it down there? Imagine if the coordinators ran out on the field to run the ball. Think about what we do at Crown, right? Every once in a while, a coordinator will run out and they'll grab the ball and they'll run with it. Imagine if the football teams actually did that. What would happen? Imagine if everybody on the field called audibles when they saw something on the defense, and then after that, the receivers told the running backs what to do outside of the huddle. And after that, the tight end also told the running back what to do. And so we have that inside of Crown, right, where you get direction from 4 different people, and you don't know which one to follow because we're not actually running a play. So imagine if the offensive line just didn't even know what the play was. They just stood out there and wait for somebody to hike the ball and tried to figure out what to do. Imagine if the coordinators were the MVPs, right? At the end of the game, they nominated a coordinator as MVP. That just doesn't happen, right? It's all about the players. Imagine if there were no quarters. Man, if you didn't break these games down into quarters, it'd be pretty tiring. And if there were no first down, you'd have a lot of balls swapping sides a lot of time. This thing hurts. So your dad even have it back. So if the NFL played football like we run our business, frankly, there'd be no fans, no media, no high-paid players, no game, and no dynasty. They just wouldn't be relevant. And so what I'm trying to drive home here is that's a complex game that they figured out how to play by breaking it down into roles and plays, and we can benefit from thinking the exact same way in the things that we actually do. I have here just to play off the rugged individualists. They'd call it backyard brawl, and they only be played by rugged individualists. So here's my takeaway. Let's not run around the field making up plays, looking like a bunch of monkeys humping a football. Right? So, as much as it's about the plays, the players, it is absolutely about the plays that we're running. And we as an organization need to do a better job at defining what are our plays and knowing when to actually call those plays. By the way, there are no plays without roles. I mean, you can't draw up plays if you don't know what the roles are. We just recently said the quarterback, if you will, is the CPM, the Crown Program Manager. That's the name. So it's not a project or program. It's a CPM, and that's the role. That's the only one we have defined, by the way. So we use different terms for different things. We just need to figure out what that is. Another takeaway is number 3. Players can have multiple roles, and it happens all the time. You can play special teams and offense, and sometimes offense and defense, but they always know what role they're playing. They don't play the same way in offense as they do on defense. So they know the role they're in, and they play that role. So they put on that hat, and they play it, and then they switch. And we could benefit from that also. We should have a definitive set of plays and run them. So that's not just any old audible anytime we want. What are our core plays that we're going to run for these different situations? And we can get to that point. Know who should and shouldn't call a play, right? It's not everybody's. Everybody can't go be calling plays. We need to know who can call audibles, who can call certain defensive plays, and who can call certain offensive plays, and let them actually call it. Now, it doesn't mean they shouldn't solicit input from folks on what's going on, but they're the one at the end of the day that are calling the plays. I have here who can call an audible and set what I have here. Know who can call an audible when the set play doesn't look like it will work. So we talked about that. How about huddling before a play? I think that's an interesting concept, right? Maybe doing a huddle before we actually go out and meet with our clients. Just do a quick little huddle. I mean, it doesn't have to be a 3-hour meeting or even a 30-minute meeting. It could be a 30-second huddle to say, what's our objective here?